Ladies, my guest today is someone who feels like a true kindred spirit in this work. Dr. Aleksandra Gajer.
Geyer.
She's a board certified physician and the founder of the Gajer practice, where she's redefining what modern metabolic and hormonal medicine should look like. And let me tell you, this woman is speaking my language. Hormones, peptides, metabolic health, stress physiology. She looks at midlife through the same lens I do, which is that women are not broken. Their physiology is changing, and when you actually understand how hormones, metabolism, and signaling pathways shift in midlife, the whole picture suddenly makes sense. That's why I was so excited to have her on because Dr. Gajer isn't out here giving women the same old eat less, move more nonsense. She's asking deeper questions. She's connecting dots. She's using precision diagnostics and personalized care in a way I wish every woman had access to. And she shares the same mission I do, helping women finally understand what their bodies are doing and how to work with those changes instead of fighting them. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Aleksandra.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
I know it's great. And this was an unexpected conversation. I thought we were having this conversation in February, and I was telling you that before we aired. And so I was really happy to see that, oh, this is the woman that I was so
Yeah.
interested in speaking with. So I don't have to wait till February. So, what got you into this style of care when it comes to midlife women? Because you're not just doing the hormones, you're not just like, here's your pellet therapy, or, you get a lot of that right now where it's not personalized care, not
hmm
taking into the account peptides and the weight loss peptides and the lifestyle medicine. And you're not doing a one size fits all approach. And so, what made you go, this is what I feel like I need to do?
Yeah. So I think with most people, it's never a linear path, right? So
No.
I started my career in emergency medicine. I went into medical school a little bit older than some. I mean, I was in my mid 20s, so it wasn't horribly, but I was a few years out of college and I had a real passion and calling and I really wanted to go into medicine to become a healer. I already had this um belief of something that I wanted to do for people. And my medical education was very challenging. And it also felt in a lot of ways like it missed the mark. Like the things I was learning, especially as I moved further into my training and I was seeing patients. Sure, we were treating diseases, we were writing prescriptions, we were doing procedures, but the questions that people really cared about, why don't I feel well? Why is my energy crashing? How can I make sure that I don't feel like this in 10 years? We couldn't answer. And I felt like my medical education was not equipping me to answer this. So I went into emergency medicine and I practiced emergency medicine for 10 years. I loved
Wow.
emergency medicine. It was so fun. And there was, there was a lot of places to step in and make a huge difference in people's outcomes. But the other side of emergency medicine is chronic illness, which you see the same individuals coming back again and again. You put sort of a band-aid solution on whatever they have going on, their diabetes, their kidney failure, and within a month, you see them and they're worse. And
Mhm.
eventually, one of the times they come into your ER, they die. And
Wow.
I was spending a lot of my free time really trying to understand how do I create a state of health? Here I am trained in how to treat disease, on understand where disease comes from and, learning all this pharmacology. But what about the state of health? That's what I think people are looking for. People are looking to feel vital, to feel healthy. And that kind of became my passion. And I felt like a lot of these people that were coming in really sick, if I got to see them 10, 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be
Mhm.
sticking stents in your heart. We wouldn't be telling you you have an irreversible stroke and you can't walk anymore. Um, and I think it was somewhat serendipity that I got the opportunity to start my practice. And I actually bought an existing practice from a physician who was retiring, and he was an excellent internal medicine physician. And he really wanted to sell his practice as someone who would care for his patients. And
Oh,
we
wow.
met. It just sort of worked out. And he had a weight loss program within the practice, which is something that I was already interested in. And that kind of just started me down the road of how could I implement more of what I know about creating health. And we started with weight loss, we started with metabolic health, but then as I got deeper into my practice, hormones were the next logical step. That, hormones are these biochemical messengers that we have in our bodies that actually create health and vitality in a lot of ways. Um and once I started working with hormones, there was a lot of other things, gut health, and eventually there were some women who maybe we got their metabolic health optimized, we got their hormones looking pretty good on paper, but they had gone through years and years of severe stress. Maybe they've accomplished incredible things in their career, and there were some symptoms that were still not where they wanted to be. And that got me interested in peptides, which are another incredible modality that I think is kind of icing on the cake, where we can get people really living full lives, vital lives, and create that state of health and vitality that can take them into all decades of their lives.
Wow. I would think that there's probably so many physicians like you who went into medicine thinking that they were doing this because they wanted to help people feel better and get better. And then you get there and you're like, oh, this is not a great model of care. This is not what I
Right.
was looking for.
It's not care.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the care there's a lot of wonderful things about our medical education. I'm so grateful for it. But the care, to some extent, gets trained out of you, and efficiency is what's important. We are bound to this insurance model where we have to see 30 people a day. How quickly can you see people? How quickly can you? And the only thing you can do in a 10-15 minute visit is write a prescription. I think real care is not possible. Um, so yes, the care of healthcare is something that I think is so important.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that doctors, like in med school, you're not trained on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. You're not trained in peptides. And so people
Right.
kind of like, they'll sometimes automatically be looking for, oh, well, I need to go see a licensed medical provider for these prescriptions and these hormones and these peptides, and they're going to know how to take care of me. And it's like, actually, no, like you have to go and get special training in these fields. Like you're not taught this in medical school. And I remember my physician at the time when I was in my mid 30s and I had endometriosis. And
Mm,
I mean, this was so 15 years ago in Canada, because we're way behind, I feel like she had taken a course in bioidentical hormones. And she had sent me to this gynecologist or some sort of specialist who wanted to put me on Lupron for
mm,
endometriosis, which is like chemical menopause. Like
yeah,
it's the worst
awful.
drug in the whole world. And
Yes.
here I am in my like fertile years. And
Hmm.
my doctor said, no, no, I'll give you bioidentical progesterone. Like
Wow,
that's
that's
like
amazing.
unheard of, right?
That is unheard of. Yes, yes, absolutely. That's so cool.
Yeah, very cool. So when women they hit their 40s, the 40, 45, and they feel like, and they'll say this, that something broke. And it's like all the things that used to work for them for their metabolic health suddenly no longer works. And it's like something takes over their body. Can you explain kind of what is happening during this period of time to our metabolic health?
Yes, and that's so interesting. A lot of women talk about sort of falling off a ledge, that
Yes.
suddenly, your body's not your own anymore, and everything that you recognized, that all the things that worked all of a sudden are just not working as well as they should. And everybody is a little different, but what starts to happen as we enter our 40s. Our hormones do start to change. Perimenopause, that time period before we actually stop cycling, can last a different amount of time for different people, but it could start as young as 35. And what we generally start seeing is a roller coaster of estrogen, and where estrogen is going up and down, and it's no longer very consistent across the cycles. And progesterone is starting to get lower. And most of the time, I see progesterone falling before estrogen. And that progesterone is our calming hormone. So, progesterone is very important for sleep, for anxiety, for stress resilience. I often talk to women about, do you feel that perhaps you're less resilient to stress? Like the things that you used to take in stride now really rattle you. And I think that's sometimes that feeling of what's wrong with me, what's going on. Um, and that can be that those falling levels of progesterone. Progesterone is also anti-inflammatory. So we see a big rise in autoimmune illness, and also inflammation is a cause for insulin resistance, which, as many people know, insulin is sort of the master regulating hormone for your metabolism. Insulin is, you have receptors for insulin on every cell in your entire body, on every organ. And there are three reasons why we become insulin resistant. They are inflammation, stress, and too much insulin. And too much insulin happens when we are eating too much sugar, refined sugar, flour products that is raising the insulin level in the body. And inflammation can happen because your progesterone is falling, and you're also losing the protective effects of estrogen as well, where there are times when your estrogen is high enough, but there are times when you have these little valleys and your ovaries are underproducing. So there's this perfect storm. You know, insulin resistance is a big part of it. Insulin resistance, it happens when those that insulin is knocking on the door to the cells, but the cells are not responding to the knock anymore. So your body's producing more and more insulin. And insulin is what's called an anabolic hormone. So it builds, it grows, it turns on the growth pathways and makes you store fat. And it becomes sort of one of those vicious cycles where then fat is highly inflammatory, and that creates more insulin resistance. So there's this perfect storm hormonally. Often this is a high stress time in women's lives. Perhaps we've been raising children for the past decade and we're at a very stressful point in our career. Also, the raw products that create progesterone also make cortisol. So if you've been burning out your cortisol and sort of burning on all cylinders, you're going to be even lower on progesterone and be more burned out in that way, and perhaps be more metabolically unhealthy. And all these things sort of happen silently, where it's just your body's not responding the way it used to, but it can often feel like, what's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Am I just not disciplined enough? But there's this perfect storm right behind it all.
Yeah, and we see the insulin resistant look start to happen. The type 2 diabetes look, which is the meno belly, right? That
Hmm.
hard, everything starts to pack around the midsection. And I remember it happening overnight. Like
Hmm.
overnight, within 6 months, I think I had packed on 15 pounds in my midsection and I had changed nothing. Like it is so powerful, these hormones that are driving this. Like I just think it's unbelievable how powerful they are because for the first time, suddenly diet and exercise aren't influencing it for so many
Yes.
women. I know some, yes, for sure, they can, make those changes and it can help a little bit. But when we're talking about midlife weight gain and metabolic health, it is like suddenly diet and exercise don't even touch it.
Right. Exactly. And I think it also varies. Some women are have had more chemical exposures, and those women suffer even more.
Yeah,
You
right,
know,
right.
we live in this toxic soup now that we're not quite aware of. But for most of human history, we were eating whole foods, foods that came from the earth or from animals. and that were simply prepared. And in the last 100 years, there are all these non-food chemicals that are entering our bodies, and we are affected by this to different extents. And those hormonal transitions can be much more painful if we do have more chemical exposure. If we are people who are genetically predisposed to suffer from inflammation more, we're going to suffer more, and that fat will be more stubborn as well.
What do you think is behind the chemical exposure? Like, what is that doing? Is it making it so that we aren't processing these hormones properly suddenly, or just the inflammation, or is it on the receptors? Like, and what chemicals are we talking? Heavy metals, mold, or just the chemicals everywhere in our food and water and air?
Right. This is such a big topic.
I
And I
know.
think that there are a number of places where this hits us. There are, of course, such a huge number of chemicals. There are, of course, chemicals in the air. I think our food supply is huge. There's so many ingredients in our food that are not food. And and it hits in different places. So we have a process called methylation in the body. And you've probably explored this at some point, but in order to break down toxins and to metabolize your hormones appropriately, we have to have intact methylation. And that really breaks down when your chemical exposure is high. And you can no longer detox old hormones that need to leave the body and sort of have that pathway be clean. But the inflammation is a huge part of this.
Mhm.
The immune system should be kind of a balanced scale, where on one side, we're looking for disease, we're looking for bacteria, we're looking for viruses, we're looking for cancer. And that's really important. But now there are all these chemicals that are in our bodies, and they may be coming again from food, from the air, from the solvents that we're using to clean our homes, from microplastics. And now the body thinks there's danger everywhere. And that is inflammation is cellular fear. So it's the immune system on overdrive. And when the immune system is turned on in that way, it actually taps into that insulin response that we talked about, because it's mobilizing blood sugar. We're in a state of crisis. We're fighting all these bad guys. So we need to mobilize all the resources that we can. We need to increase the blood sugar in the blood vessels so that we can fight whatever this invader is, which actually is not there. It's just this sort of false inflammation. So there's certainly a number of ways that we can get in trouble here.
Hmm. How can we, how could a woman who maybe hasn't quite hit this yet, or she's just starting to feel these changes, let's say she's 42, suddenly she's putting on some weight and she's having, changes in her cycle. Is there things that we can be looking out for and doing so that we avoid the metabolic fallout that happens?
To some extent, yes. And I know it can sound pretty overwhelming and daunting, but I think that there are simple ways that we can protect ourselves. I think that the first primary thing is trying to eat whole foods as much as possible, trying to avoid those foods that have a massive ingredient list. And we're all busy, and sometimes convenience foods are important, but trying to make sure that our convenience foods are not packed with 100,000 different chemicals. The other way that these chemicals are interfering is our gut microbiome. So we have more little bugs in our colon than we have cells in our entire body. And in most of medicine, this has been largely ignored. We really haven't studied these populations, but there's literally more bugs than we have cells. So we're finding out that they're doing some pretty important things, and things like Diet Coke, which is like so polarized right now, but like we know it kills the good guys, and those good bugs are supposed to be sending signal happy hormones to your brain. You make the most serotonin in your gut than anywhere else in the body, and they're also managing your metabolism, and they're communicating with every other part of your body. So taking care of that gut microbiome. And um, I think women were done a huge disservice in prior decades. We were told to move more, eat less. We were fed all these diet products that had all the fat leached out of them, that were laden with chemicals and in a big way, I think what women heard is be smaller, be smaller, be smaller, make yourself smaller. And we had the cardio queens and run it off. And that really did a number on our metabolisms if we did live through those years. So I really encourage women to reframe the way we think about everything we do in our lives, but we need to be building up. We don't need to be smaller. We don't need to be less. We need to be on a nutrient hunt in our diet. So it's not how many calories is this, or, it's is this going to feed my body? Is this going to feed all those tiny little bugs that are communicating with everything else? Is this going to feed my muscles? So am I getting enough protein? I know protein is God is the goddess right now. So getting
Yeah.
we've all heard it, but it is true. It can naturally increase those levels of GLP-1 that we know help us feel satiated for longer periods of time, that tune up the metabolism. So having enough protein to support healthy muscle mass is really important. And then I think fiber coming from vegetables, from fruits, from eating different colored foods, from really when we're choosing foods rather than thinking, will this just cure my hunger or um, not have too many calories? It's what nutrients am I going to get out of this? And choosing the foods that are really going to feed us and build us up.
hmm I just interviewed Kiran Krishnan. Do you know him?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the gut microbiome master of all
Uh-huh.
masters. Like he was just blew my mind. I basically sat for an hour and a half. Barely said a word, and he just went off on the gut microbiome. But he talked so much about the bidirectional relationship between the hormones and the guts, because not only does the gut help us to metabolize and get rid of these hormones, but our hormones impact gut integrity. And so as we
Hmm.
lose estrogen, we get leakier in our gut. And the immune system and the like, it was just so fascinating to me. And I'm like, wow, it is really one of those things. It's yes, we got to eat. And he talked so much about fiber. And he's like, I know it's not sexy.
Right.
Fiber's not sexy. Like people don't want to hear this, right? They want to hear
Yes.
something else that's fancier. Like, this is what you got. This is the pill you need to take. And he's like, really? You got to eat more fiber. He's like, it's going to
Yeah.
feed that gut microbiome. You got to get rid of the crappy foods. You got to, this is like number one. And I was like, it really is, you
It really
know?
is. And you feel better. I mean, I think it's
hmm
a direct once we do start making some of those changes, your body starts telling you that yes, this is good. And it may not be overnight, but you are building something. And
hmm
I think that's really what I want to encourage women to think about. We're not becoming smaller, breaking down, we're building something. We're building this incredible body that's meant to be strong and really resourced. And I think that's what hormones do. That's what peptides do. They give our body the resources to do all those other things that we're trying to do in life.
And so, at what point then in your practice do you feel like when should a woman start to look at hormone replacement therapy and peptides to prevent some of these things coming down the pipeline and then also help to reverse it if they've already come down the pipeline?
Right. Yes. So, I think it is different for every woman, but I think it's pretty much never too early, 35 on. If
Yeah.
you feel that something is off, then I think getting a baseline and getting an understanding of what your body is doing can be really helpful. So um, if your energy isn't where you were, if you're not able to burn fat the way you used to, if you're not keeping on muscle, if you're feeling exhausted after workouts, if all of a sudden your sleep is interrupted every hour or two, I think doing the labs is worth it and doing and working with somebody, of course, who can do pretty comprehensive labs. That I think the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are very important hormones, but they are the tip of the iceberg. I want to also know what your fasting insulin level is. I want to know your thyroid studies beyond a TSH. I'd like to know if you have any thyroid antibodies. I'd also like to know if you have other signs of inflammation, like checking a high sensitivity CRP or an ANA, which is anti-nuclear antibodies that is a way that we look at some autoimmune diseases, particularly lupus. But what that means is that you have antibodies to the nucleus of every cell. So there are way
Wow.
more women who are carrying this now. And I think inflammation is a fire that now we can catch early. And so maybe your hormone levels are still okay, but maybe there's this hidden layer of inflammation underneath all that that we need to address so that you don't go through a really rocky period when your hormones start changing. Um, I will put women on bioidentical progesterone as early as they need it, if they need to. If
Yep.
you're not sleeping, if you are feel far less resilient to stress, if you're having symptoms of inflammation, I think it's very safe. And cycling that while still having a period can be really helpful. There are some women, especially highly active women, who benefit from supplemental testosterone. I certainly don't offer it to everyone. I think it's most helpful for those women who are athletic
Mhm.
and who are trying to um, maintain a level of performance. And for women whose levels are truly low, I think it doesn't, if your levels are okay, it's not going to do anything for you. But
Yep.
I've seen some women who really have non-existent testosterone. We give you back the testosterone and all of a sudden drive comes back. I think a lot of women describe this feeling of just feeling blah, like I just don't feel like myself. And maybe they've been offered antidepressants for that. But testosterone is the drive hormone. So not just sex drive. Sex drive is a very small part of it. It's drive to work, drive to perform, drive to take care of your kids, to be creative, to enjoy your hobbies. So um, that can also be started early. And there are some young women, especially those suffering from burnout, who can have fairly low testosterone levels.
Yeah. And I always think too, like the women, when you talk about the athletic women and the need for testosterone, I always talk about that there's sometimes genetics where you're more androgenic or you're more estrogenic. And if you looked at
Hmm.
my DNA profile and all my genes, you would see, oh, she's very estrogenic. And you can tell by just looking at my body, I'm very estrogenic.
Hmm.
So if my estrogen drops even just a little tiny bit, I get all the symptoms. But
Mm.
then I've got a sister who's the complete opposite. She's androgenic, super athletic, has been her whole life, up and down, super straight, no curves, not a lot of breasts. And her testosterone drops, she feels it. And
Mm.
estrogen, she's like, meh, like take it or leave it kind of thing. But it's the testosterone. And so I wonder if it's the athletic women, it's because genetically they were always more androgenic than they were estrogenic. So that as if that starts to fall, they're really affected by it. Would you think that too?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a great
Hmm.
point where we have different inputs, different levels of
Hmm.
sensitivity, and some women do. I think women do have a different set point, and there's a lot of different ways to look at hormones to measure them, and the numbers are just one data point. The woman who's sitting in front of you and what she's telling you, I think is very important in her life history, especially things like what you're talking about. Like, am I more estrogen sensitive or am I more androgenic, more sensitive to that testosterone?
Yeah. And when it comes to the peptides, are they working in a similar fashion to these sex hormones where they become depleted? Because these peptides are all peptides that are found in the human body, are they not?
Yes.
And they're kind of like a
Yes,
bioidentical hormone.
that's
Like
exactly
the,
right.
okay, yes, yes. If you
Yes,
could
so they're
explain that.
chemical. Sure, absolutely. So they are chemical messengers. So hormones are chemical messengers that they come from endocrine glands, which are like the thyroid and the ovaries. They come from these glands and they work on different tissues. Peptides are another type of messenger. So they are still orchestrating a cellular reaction that supports the body in some way. So um, they message your body to do a number of different things, and they do become downregulated as we age. We humans have been on Earth for about 200 to 300,000 years, and it's really been the last couple hundred that we've lived past 45. So, excuse me. Um, Genetically, we're sort of built to be optimized until 45, and the body really tries to conserve energy. And after our fertile years, after we've done our job on Earth,
Yeah.
not only hormones fall, but those peptides tend to fall as well. And I can talk a little bit about the categories of peptides, what they do,
Yeah.
and how they can support our bodies.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Let's dive into it. So I think we sort of are starting to think about peptides mostly because of the GLP-1 agonist peptides that became popular for weight loss. And these are medications that increase our level of something called GLP-1, which is produced in the stomach, that has a number of downstream effects that result in weight loss. They slow down our gut transit. They can also make us more insulin sensitive, and they work on our brains to crave food less. And I think there's several other things that it does that we don't quite understand yet, but we
Hmm.
know that they're very potent in that way. So of course, that was made into a pharmaceutical drug at the doses, the higher doses that it used at. It no longer acts truly like a peptide; it acts more like a drug. But it is a peptide where it sort of induces a chemical reaction. Now, there are other peptides that work on inflammation and balancing the immune system, others that help with body composition, some that can help modulate our growth hormone levels. There are peptides that help with energy, longevity, mitochondrial health, which I think is particularly interesting in women in the perimenopause, menopause transition. Um, and there's a number of others. Some are truly just longevity peptides that protect our DNA in different ways. There is some peptides that help with sleep. There are some peptides that can increase libido and sex drive. So there are a number of functions, but um, I can start with one that is very popular. If people have heard about peptides, they've probably heard of this one. And I think it's a good example of how peptides work in general. And that is BPC 157. So it is a common healing peptide, and it's one that's been used extensively in the athletic community for many decades. And it is something that we produce in the stomach naturally, and it stands for Body Protective Compound, BPC. And it protects the lining of the stomach from getting digested from all the acid there. So scientists isolated the BPC. They found that it was protecting the stomach in this way, and they started studying it. And first, they found that in animal studies, if the animals were given more BPC, they could heal ulcers. So
Hmm.
stomach ulcers happen when there's not enough protection of the stomach lining, and there's a hole. Basically, a hole happens in the stomach, and you give them more BPC, ulcers heal, and all of a sudden the lining is protected again. And then they started studying it for healing other parts of the body and especially tendons. So there's some very dramatic studies where animals have their Achilles tendon cut, and then they get injections of BPC. And compared to the animal that did not get the BPC, the Achilles heals significantly faster.
Wow.
And we've noticed in humans that if we increase your production of BPC, if you give you back a little bit more BPC 157, it can find injured tissue. So people who have joint pain, people who have an injury that's just not healing, who are considering surgery, people who have a tendon tear or something like that. The BPC will find injured or inflamed tissue, and it will recruit the right cells to increase and improve repair and recovery. It also does something called angiogenesis, where it forms new small blood vessels so we can actually shuttle the right cells there. So the BPC is not actually fixing anything. It's not going in there with a hammer and nails, but it is putting out an invitation to the party. It tells people where the event is happening, and it brings the right immune cells there that basically orchestrates healing in a more efficient and organized sense.
And do they
So
see BPC like levels going? Like, do they test? Can they test levels? Probably not. No.
no,
Okay.
we're not there. We're
No,
not
I didn't think
there. I
so.
mean, yeah, I have not seen a lab or anything that has advertised that. I think we're just not there that we can actually test and see if you're deficient. But it is one of those peptides it's not FDA approved. None of these will probably ever be FDA approved because there are some laws against patenting very small peptides. So, clinical trials are extremely expensive, and unless a pharmaceutical company can sort of recoup their investment, these large clinical trials are very difficult to do. So we don't have as many studies on these peptides as we would something like a drug. Um, but they basically trigger this reaction, and the animal studies that we have, they try to find something called an LD50 or lethal dose, where with this dose 50% of like a mouse population would die. And they tried to do these studies to see what the lethal dose of the BPC would be, and they ran out of BPC before anything bad happened. So
I heard Dr. Conover is talking
oh yeah.
about he was on Huberman's podcast and he was
Hmm.
saying that so average dose for BPC 157 is anywhere from 500 to 600 micrograms a day
Hmm.
of BPC, and he was saying that they've gone up to 5,000
Right.
micrograms a day without any problem. Now, I'm not, please
Yeah.
do not take this as medical advice, people. I'm just saying,
Yes.
just safety wise, it seems to have a pretty good safety profile.
Yeah, for what we know, for the sort of data that we have, it has a great safety profile. The people who should not take this one in particular are people who have cancer.
Mm,
So there are, especially in older men, we see a lot of, oh, we don't need to talk about the men, but a lot of people will have like a very slow growing prostate cancer, and it can
right.
identify as small tumor as inflamed tissue and build new blood vessels and support the growth of that tumor. So that's something that I'm very careful with. And we have to make sure we have screening mammograms every day and every week, every year in the ladies, not every day.
No.
That would be torture. But yes, regular screening. We have to think about your family history and make sure that that the benefits outweigh the risks.
Yeah, and there's quite a few peptides that have that warning. I like the growth hormone peptides. I hear same thing that there's no evidence to show that it does do it, but the mechanism of action shows it. Like that, oh,
Exactly.
if there's something growing there, this could promote the growth.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a theoretical possibility. And there's a number of the growth hormone promoting peptides, and it sort of makes sense that if you have a tumor, you wouldn't want to have more growth hormone swimming around. And I actually check IGF-1 levels to see where they are in women. A lot of women are depleted in growth hormone, and ideal is somewhere around 200. It's a very easy test to get with your blood. And women who are like in the 80s, if you give them a short course of this sort of growth hormone promoting peptide, all of a sudden they come back to life in this huge way. They get so much more out of their workouts. Growth hormone is so important for our sleep too, for getting deep sleep. All of a sudden, sleep is deeper. So most peptides are cycled. We don't use them continuously like we would do with hormone therapy after menopause, but they are meant to up level a certain reaction in our system for a short period of time, and then we can switch to different peptides at different times depending on the goals we're working towards.
Why is that? It's always recommended, 2 to 3 months, and then you take the same amount as a break off of them before before if you were going to start it again, before you would start it again.
Right. I think because we are treating these more as bioregulators than, let's say, a drug or a real replacement. So we are, again, recruiting some kind of chemical reaction to have some sort of beneficial action in the body. We don't want to wear out those receptors or make our body less sensitive to this compound, but we use it for a period of time to sort of up level what that's doing. One peptide that I think is probably my favorite for women in perimenopause, and it's one I've tried myself as well. Perimenopause, menopause is something called MOTS-C,
Yes.
and yeah, you know that one.
I have
It's
some in my fridge waiting for
Yes.
me.
Oh my gosh, lucky you. You're gonna have a I and everybody doses this differently. I usually do it just for once a month. I mean for 1 month, either once or twice per year, depending on a woman's symptoms, where she is in life. But it is a mitochondrial peptide that basically cleans up the way the mitochondria is working. And the mitochondria is the powerhouse of all our cells. And it's really important for brain health, for heart health. The highest density of mitochondria in our bodies are in our brain and in our hearts. It's very important for hormonal balance too. As we lose hormonal support or when we're on that hormonal roller coaster, the energy that we're producing in our mitochondria is dampened, and the mitochondrial function, again because of all our chemical exposures and stress, can really be impaired. So doing that kind of mitochondrial upgrade once or twice a year can be huge for women, and everything sort of gets better: energy, exercise tolerance. It's sort of an exercise mimicker, so it gives your body similar benefits as if you were exercising, but it also increases what benefits you might get out of exercise. So I think it's another one of those bioregulators where it's an investment, a short
Mhm.
investment
It's
in
expensive.
kind of yes, and it's a yes, it's a investment of that sort, but I think it's also a bioregulatory investment in your
Okay.
mitochondrial health. So you clean it up once or twice a year, and that can actually go a long way to preventing chronic illness 10, 15 years down the road, and keep you energized and fit and active for much longer.
Do you know if there's any studies where they actually used these peptides long term, like MOTS-C every day for a year just to see what happens? There
No, I
isn't
don't think
any.
so.
No,
I
no.
don't think so. Epitalin, there was like a 10-year study of epitalin. Epitalin is one of these peptides that was developed in Russia that protects the telomeres of DNA. And in some animal studies, it increased lifespan by 25%, which is huge. It had these mice living to in human years what would be 120. We have not seen those sort of results in humans, but
Wow.
there is 10-year studies on epitalin of a 3-week course once a year. The people who took it did have an increased lifespan compared to those who didn't, but also much reduction of chronic illness. So less diabetes, less hypertension, less kidney disease. So a major reduction in chronic illness, which makes sense. If you're protecting your DNA,
Yeah.
which is really cellular medicine, which, if you're protecting your mitochondria, if you are aging, really is the degradation of your DNA, it's the degradation of your mitochondria. If we actually target these strategically once or twice a year, it can go a long way towards preventing chronic illness and keeping us healthy.
I got that one in my fridge too, just waiting to be used because
That's
I heard it was so good for
amazing.
sleep. So I'm like, I'm gonna try it because
Yeah.
it's supposed to help reset your circadian clock on the inside. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So and there's another one called Pinelion. They are similar. The Pinelion's a little better for the sleep and the circadian rhythm,
Might have that one
but
too.
both of those are helpful for your pineal gland produces melatonin, but it also produces a lot of other minor sleep hormones. But I've had people who've had sleep problems their whole life. They take Pinelion for 21 days, and all of a sudden their sleep-wake cycles are back to normal, and they're falling asleep, staying asleep. That's been one of the ones that has just had incredible. benefits for the women that I work with.
Oh, I was going to say as if that's not the number one complaint. Between weight, sleep, and energy, I would say that those three are so huge. So if the MOTS-C
Yeah.
is hitting on the mitochondria,
Hmm.
and that can help with energy levels and recovery. And then you've got the epitalin or the is that how you
Hmm.
say Penelian
Yeah.
one for sleep? Oh yeah, like you can, and then the GLP-1s. So
Hmm.
why is it then that we can use GLP-1s once a week for extended periods of time? Or is that still considered not taking it every day because it's a once a week injection?
Right. Yes. So they the timing on each one of these is a little different. Like MODS-C is 3 times a week. The molecule for the GLP-1s just stays around a little bit longer, and we can see its effects actually last for up to 10 days. So it's very nice and
Yeah,
convenient. And it is something that's been studied more for long-term use. Even though I do think that there is some receptor saturation at some point,
yeah,
the people who are on it for a
for
long
sure.
period of time see less effects eventually. So, with the GLP-1s, I think they're fantastic in the right situation. But I'm a huge advocate for the minimal effective dose.
Yeah, same.
And if we for a lot of women, especially in perimenopause, because weight is so sensitive to changes in hormones. So even if we get someone on bioidentical hormones, I feel like the weight is often the last thing that kind of
Yes,
responds.
if at
And
all. Yeah,
if at all, exactly. So we often need
yeah.
a little bit of that metabolic tune-up. But I find that a lot of women respond beautifully to a microdose, a very small
Yeah.
dose. And once we're kind of at the goal weight, I have them go to every 10 days, then every 2 weeks. And I have a lot of women giving themselves a once a month injection, and they're able to maintain on that until they are kind of out of the woods with menopause. And then a lot of times the weight stabilizes and you really don't need as much support as you did before.
Yeah, I see that all the time too. And
Yeah.
we've had, thousands of people go through our program, and I think there's been maybe one or two people that have had to go to the higher dosing, like even just above six, seven always being like the top where very few have ever had to go.
Right.
And they can go up to
Yeah.
15. And some of these clinics are like,
Oh
they have the
yeah. If
titration
that's
every
your
2 months until you get to 15
if
milligrams.
that's your only tool, then we're in for
No,
some
you're right.
problems. Yeah. And I think the big thing with peptides too is I tell women, if you don't want to change anything about your life, if you want to, eat junk food and sit on the sofa, please don't waste your money. This isn't worth it. Like they're not magic. They're not going to enter your body and do all this for you. And a lot of the women that, we work with are women who are high performers, who are already doing a lot. And the problem is that their body is not listening. So I think this is right for those women who are already investing in their health through exercise. We're trying to make healthy choices. You're not going to be perfect. No one is. But if you are already health conscious, but there's still these lagging symptoms, and that's where this can come up and support your body to respond positively to the inputs that you're putting in. But of course, it won't. It's not, there are no shortcuts. Sorry. There's
No, no,
just,
you still have to
yeah,
do the work.
you
Yes,
got to do the work.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But it does sometimes make the work easier. And I also
Oh,
find that
yeah.
some women come to me and they are so burned out and their body is so unsupported. The biochemical support is not there, that they're just like, and they're blaming themselves because they
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
won't. Then you need the biochemical support to get yourself up and actually do it. I think my clinic's a little unique that we have health counselors that meet with you every week, and there's just a lot of accountability to make sure you're going to get. If you're making this investment, I want you to get everything out of it. The best results, and really make a push for feeling the way you want to feel and having the health span that you're looking for.
Yeah, so many women they beat themselves up or feel like they've failed if they're giving in to the weight loss peptides. I think too because there's so much backlash going on out in social media, like how dare you? And if you're gonna go do this and take these peptides, and you're giving up and you're taking the easy road. And I get so mad because I was one of
Yeah,
those
me
people
too.
that it's like I spent my whole life trying to keep a healthy weight. I ate perfectly, I exercised, I did it all. I mean, this
Right.
is the industry I'm in. I was definitely
Yeah.
walking the walk, And so for
Yes.
me, it was like it got off that last bit of menopause weight gain that I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't get it off. And it
Hmm.
was like, oh, like, this is so
Right.
much better. Like, but I felt
Yes.
horribly guilty when I first decided to do it. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm a
It's so
failure.
sad. No, I mean,
And I
it's
was like,
so sad, you
no,
know?
this is like, no, if anyone deserves it, I do. That's what I'm like. And
Exactly.
and most of
Right.
these women that I work with feel that too. They're like, I've put in the work.
Exactly.
I'm not cheating here. I've put in the work time and I've put in the
Hmm.
work. And I'm like, yes, like don't beat yourself up for this. Like you
Yeah.
can
And
use
that's why
these
they
safely.
work. I mean, I've also worked with women who don't want to put in the work or aren't
Yep.
willing, and it doesn't really work. I mean, again, there's no magic here, but to those women who are really caring for their bodies, you need the bio if you don't have the biochemical support, then all the good things you're doing may not work the way you want them to. And some of that is genetic, some of that is our exposure, some of that is our stress levels, some of that is what the debt that we pay for being successful in a man's world, the
Yeah.
stress and all of that. It's just, it changes our biochemistry. And yes, I think women deserve all the support in the world and should never feel guilty about getting it.
No, it's time. It's time that we're taken care of and that if we so choose, we can look great and feel great. And it's not just like, this is natural, just get through it, which is pretty much like 90% of what they're still being told out there in the world. They go to
Yes,
their physician and it's like, yeah, your hormones are normal. And they're like, but I don't have hormones. Yep, but that's normal for you. You're in
exactly.
menopause, you'll get through it. And it's like, screw you.
Right. Yeah,
It makes me mad.
absolutely.
What are
Yeah, me
your
too.
other like favorite peptides for midlife women? So we've got, you like the BPC, which I think is great because our gut health does start to go down, as I realize now after talking
Hmm.
to Kieran. So BPC
Yeah,
157, not only for inflammation, but gut health and so many, like you said, tendon healing and
exactly.
it is the most popular I've heard peptide besides
Yes, yes, I think
GLP-1s.
it is. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it is the most sort of widely used. So, yes, I love that one. I love the Motzi.
See.
And then there's a number of other ones and the Pinelion that we talked about is a
Yeah.
wonderful bioregulator in terms of just resetting that circadian rhythm. I think there are some growth hormone promoting peptides that are very powerful too, that can be really helpful. Tesamorelin is one that I like particularly for midlife women. So it is one that increases your natural production of growth hormone, but also burns belly fat. So it's an interesting one because it is FDA approved. There's a drug on the market for this, and it's FDA approved for what's called visceral adiposity, which is that fat tissue that's around your organs, around your liver and your spleen. And of course, it's ungodly expensive in the pharmaceutical
It
form,
is.
but we
Yeah.
have the peptide that also does the same thing. So it's very cool in the sense that it will improve sleep quality. It will raise those growth hormone levels and it'll specifically target belly fat, which is such a difficult, stubborn area for us. So I've had women get a lot of benefit out of that. I'm sure you talk about this all the time, but muscle is so important for us that healthy muscle really is the greatest currency of health. That healthy lean muscle sends out chemical messengers called myokines to other parts of the body that are highly protective, that are anti-inflammatory, that protect brain health and mood, and are helpful for seeking out cancer cells even. So building that lean, healthy muscle is so important. So sometimes doing a course of something like tesamorelin can really burn that belly fat, that dangerous fat that's sitting around your belly. Again, it won't do anything if you're not exercising, but if women are doing that strength training, it's an investment in your muscle mass, and you can build up some of that healthy muscle mass, and have a little more energy. I think that is also a wonderful one. That's a great investment in your health.
Do you like the GHKCU for midlife women?
Yes, yes. To be honest, I haven't had as dramatic results with that one. I do think it
Okay.
helps hair, skin, and nails. It it is one that also burns awfully. Like there's
Oh, I've
all these are
heard that.
injectable.
I'm so
So all
nervous to
these
do
are,
it. Such
and
a
there's a lot of
wuss.
women who are like, not worth it. So I'm honestly trying to figure out how to like balance the formula so it's a little bit less. The topical GHKCU works really well. And we do make it into a face cream. I use it myself. I love it. The injections just burn, but they're nice for hair, skin, and nails. But honestly, one of the other benefits for most of these peptides is hair, skin, and nails. For the BPC, for the growth hormone promoting
Yes.
peptides,
Yeah.
um, the hair, skin, and nails also gets better. And that's a huge complaint of midlife women too, is hair falling out. And you get them on Nutrafol and minoxidil, and that goes so far. But I think some of all of these sort of growth and protective peptides can be really good. I think, getting more into specific complaints.
Right.
There's KPV is one that I like a lot for people who do have that more inflammatory profile, who are more prone to autoimmunity. The ladies who get stressed and break out in hives, the women who have joint pains, who can feel when the weather changes, who are puffy all the time, who have all these food sensitivities. KPV is a very short peptide that actually helps teach the immune system what's actually foreign and what
Oh,
is not. So I've seen major improvements in those kinds of inflammatory peptides, which, inflammation is a huge topic and we could spend another hour talking about it. Um,
yeah, because I
but
heard KPV was so good for histamine, and I have
yes,
histamine issue, and so I've been wanting now to try that one just in conjunction with BPC. I heard is really great for
yeah,
gut and histamine stuff, but I didn't know
yes,
why. So that's really interesting that
right.
teaches the immune system what's foreign and what's not.
Yes. And I didn't really talk about this part of my own story, but when I was in residency, I got Lyme disease and it was pretty severe. And I realized way too late. And of course, I pushed through, and I ended up feeling pretty awful for a number of years. And even after it was treated and I was recovered, I became very inflammatory in that way. And the KPV and BPC, honestly, the KPV worked better than anything I ever tried to kind of lower the inflammation and bring my body back into balance and respond to exercise appropriately. I think
Wow.
it's a beautiful tool for balancing an immune system that may be firing in the wrong direction, which that's the case for many of us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I'm gonna have to put that in my supply. Right now,
Yeah,
I've got too many to get through. I don't like to do too many at once. What is your
right.
recommendation as far as the stacking go? Like, they all sound so incredible, and I know
I
that,
know.
some
It's like a
and
kid in the candy
it
shop.
is. Oh my God, it's so bad, right? It's like, oh yeah, well, I want that. Yes, and I want that too.
Right.
I want all
Yes.
these benefits. But the reality is, and I've done podcasts on this where myself and one of my practitioners will do podcast episodes about the different peptides that we've tried and our different
Mhm.
experiences, because every single time we react completely opposite to peptides. So she'll have
Interesting.
like the best results and like better libido, better sleep, better hair, skin, nails, and I'll get puffy and gain weight and feel terrible on the same peptide.
Yeah, and that unfortunately, right, our internal milieu is different for everybody, unfortunately. Yeah, so I usually say three at a time max.
Okay.
So some of them are synergistic where they work beautifully together. And sometimes pairing a growth hormone promoting peptide with a anti-inflammatory peptide like BPC is really helpful, especially if you are building muscle and you want to protect that muscle and recover quicker between workouts. Those work really nicely together. There are also a couple brain peptides that I use quite a bit, which is Selank and Semax.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've always thought about brain health in terms of neurotransmitters. All our drugs are neurotransmitter based, but I think the more recent research, both on mood disorders, anxiety, depression, and even cognitive decline, is pointing more towards neuroinflammation. The neurotransmitters are important, of course, but we know that people with more anxiety, more depression have this microglial activation where we have inflamed brains. Brain is on fire, and that is causing some of that mood instability in addition to the neurotransmitters. So Zelenk is a peptide that was developed in Russia for their cosmonauts and their military who had to stay calm and focused in austere environments. And it will decrease neuroinflammation, increase something called brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is the juice that neurons live in, what they feed on in order to grow and stay healthy. And it also improves some of that GABA functioning, which is the calming neurotransmitter. So reduces inflammation, increases that BDNF, and also improves GABA functioning. So you're calm but more focused. And that one is only used in 21-day cycles, and you take a week off. Some people do repeat it, but it's worked beautifully for those of us who have some mild anxiety, but really need to focus, and it's quite protective for the brain. Um, Semax is similar, but it works more on focus, less on anxiety. So also reduces neuroinflammation, also increases that BDNF, which is the juice that the neurons live in, that works more on ACTH and other neurotransmitters that actually are important for focus and cognition. So, especially those of us who have trouble with focus and ADHD, those peptides have been really helpful.
Do you prefer those in injection or nasal spray? Because I see them a lot coming in nasal spray.
Injections. I honestly
Injection,
haven't seen
yeah,
the same effect from the nasal spray.
yeah, which is too bad
Yeah,
because you really
it
get
is
tired
too
of being a
bad.
pincushion.
You really do. Yeah. Yes, it is. It becomes a real, yeah,
Yeah.
that could be an annoyance. And that's why also I say don't do more than three at a time. Take your breaks, less is more. There
Yeah.
are a lot of people who get excited and they want to do it all. But honestly, if you do this slowly and you sometimes I will design a year-long program for people. We have a very long conversation. We talk for an hour about everything that's going on. And then we come up with a plan to address that stepwise over a longer period of time and really rebuild the body and address the cellular health that's related to all the complaints.
Hmm. Is there any ones besides GLP-1s that you like to use in either in conjunction with a GLP-1 or by itself that you've seen good results when it comes to weight management and insulin sensitivity?
Yes, there's actually a number of them. So the MOTS that we discussed can also help with weight loss once your
Okay.
mitochondria is working faster. And actually, a lot of women who I've had who've been resistant to the GLP-1s and, already good exercise, good diet, you clean up their mitochondrial health and all of a sudden they start responding. So that has certainly been one that is good for weight loss. The growth hormone promoting peptides are also good for turning more fat tissue into lean mass. So, your muscle is quite metabolically active. So, as you build more muscle and use those growth hormone promoting peptides, those can be very helpful for weight loss. There's also a peptide called AOD. It is a fragment of actual growth hormone, but just a small fragment of it that just causes fat loss.
Oh.
And yeah, and it's not as effective alone as the GLP-1s, but if the GLP-1s aren't working, if there's a plateau, if we're stuck for some reason, doing that for a short period of time, adding it on for a month or so is sometimes enough to just break through that plateau. So, yeah, there's a number of strategies. And you know what? I work with some women who have 100, 150 pounds to lose. So we have a long journey. And there are times when we need to be strategic and add a little something when the body doesn't want to keep listening, you know. Um, but yes, there's a number of tools in that category.
Amazing. And so you guys at your clinic, you'll work with peptides, hormones, lifestyle, correct? Like you have that
Yes,
whole functional. Yes, I love that.
we
Oh,
do.
obviously.
Yeah, yeah. And I work, I have three amazing health coaches in my office, Um, we know that if you walk out of a doctor's office, they kind of tell you what to do, you're going to forget within 24 hours. It's very hard to actually keep that up for however long, 6 months until you see them again. So with people who are looking to make some real changes, we do weekly health coaching for a period of time just to make sure that maybe they tried a strategy and it's not working as well as they hoped, or that they're having some unexpected side effects. Often doing that for a month or two can be really helpful to get on the path that you're looking for. And again, if you're going to make this investment, I think working with somebody closely to make sure you're getting the most out of it is really helpful. So
Hmm.
I found that works beautifully. The tagline of our practice is the science of health and the art of transformation. And I believe deeply in the art of
Yeah.
transformation.
Yes.
Change is hard. Change is hard. If we could all just, be told once what to do and then we all do it, then like the world would look like a completely different place. So we spend a lot of time studying the art of transformation, how to help people change, how to make meaningful changes in life that give you the results that you're looking for, because it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's not. And I was listening to a woman talk about GLP-1s on Mary Claver. I always get her name mixed up. Mary Claver
Mary
Haver
Claire
or whatever.
Haver.
Mary
Yeah.
Claire Haver. She was interviewing a woman about GLP-1s, and the woman said, "Yeah, I'll prescribe a GLP-1 in their first session with me." And Dr. Haver was like, "You would?" Basically, like kind of shocked. And she
Right.
said, "Yeah, because the people that are coming to me, they know. They know. They've tried it. They know that how they're supposed to eat, that they're supposed to exercise, that there's, all of these things. Usually they are trying to do all of them already, or they have tried it
Hmm.
a million times over and failed. And it's
Exactly.
like, yeah, so why not use these tools that can help with these transformations? And we're at a time in the world where we've got these things at our access. They've been extensively studied, some of them, not all of them, but many of the GLP ones for sure have been studied for
Yes.
a very long
Hmm.
time. They have a great safety profile. There's more and more amazing things coming out about them every day. And it's like,
Hmm.
if we can use them safely in an appropriate way with lifestyle obviously involved in that, then yeah, like let's use these tools. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
that. But I think we need to. We're at a
Exactly.
point, like you were saying, our toxic overload, all of these unnatural things that are in our environment, that we're having to use some of these things to break through because all the other stuff isn't working.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think yeah, some people want to see you playing with one arm tied behind your back, and I think that's how we live when we don't have the biochemical support. And we've our food industry, our world, we've created this mess, and
Yeah.
now we have some ways of helping ourselves out of it a little bit. And um, yeah, I'm all for using tools wisely and understanding that tools are tools, and um, we deserve to feel our best.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show. Where can everybody find you and your clinic, and who do you serve? Because you are just a couple of states, correct?
Yes. Yes. So in terms of peptide care, health coaching, we can We can see anyone throughout the country. The best place to find us at the website is thegajerpractice.com. It's Gajer. We're also on Instagram at the Gajer Practice. So on our website, there's a button to book a free intro call. That's the best way to sort of just talk to somebody for free to see if it would work well for you to work with us. And we'll give you honest advice um, and tell you everything you need to know. In terms of hormone replacement and actually writing prescriptions, ordering labs, I see patients in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. That's where I'm licensed. For those who are out of state, I can review labs, I can provide health coaching, but I can't prescribe outside those states. So we do have access to peptides and health coaching throughout the country, but the actual hormone replacement, we do in Virginia, DC, and Maryland.
Amazing. All right. I will link
Yeah.
to that in the show notes, everyone. So if you want to work with her, you can. Or if you're in one of those states or just want the peptide coaching, uh, anything else? You're on Instagram, I'm guessing.
We're on Instagram, yeah, at the Gaia Practice. You can find us there
Okay.
too. Yeah, try to show up there whenever we can. And
Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
always
keep
hard,
it's
but
always hard, but we're in this super cool age where women are talking about this. We're
yeah.
finally we're out of the dark ages and you want to shout it from the rooftop that there's help available.
Well, I appreciate everything that you're doing, and I'm so happy that there's other practices out there that are taking all of this, the whole functional approach, peptides and hormones and diet and exercise, because that's what we need. We need all of it together to live our best life. So I appreciate
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much.